I'd like to thank everyone for coming. This afternoon we'd like to address the group concerning a recent concern in our district that has come up. And I'd like to introduce folks here first, so we have a group of names and people that will introduce to you later. But off to my left here we have Mr. Jim Evans, who's our Director of Support Services for Wawasee Community Schools. We have Mr. Darrell Carr, who's a parent in our district. Mr. Jose Vasquez, who's our ESL coordinator. We have Mr. Jeff Vandree, who's the chairperson of our Minority Issues Task Force. Mr. Charles Packer, the WCEA president. We have Joe Salazar, who's a representative of our Rays of Hope community group. Mr. Isaac Cantu, who's also a member of the Rays of Hope community group. We have Mrs. Carol Schwarzentrooper, who's our school board president. And we have Ed Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez is also a representative of the Rays of Hope group, and also in our community as a patron. Our introductions are over. One of the things I'd like to do is just mention the purpose of our conference today is to come together and explain a little bit about a situation that has happened in our district, and to explain what our district hopes to learn from and to grow in that area. In our district, we have an example of an inappropriate worksheet that was used in a 4th grade classroom in our school district. The district's position on this situation is that it was inappropriate. The context of the worksheet does have a place in terms of the 4th grade curriculum addressing Indiana history, and there is a portion in that history book that deals with the KKK, and there are a question or two on the published materials that go with it. That was the context of that. The district's position on the worksheet and the materials were that they were inappropriate. Our meeting today, we would like to spend time talking about what our district hopes to learn from this. There are a number of things that have been started in our district in previous years that earlier this year that have been helpful to us in dealing with this kind of situation, and we're going to allow those individuals to speak to that today. Our moderator will be Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans will come up and he will help go through this and moderate this in the way of questions and so on as we proceed through that. And I'll let Mr. Evans come up now and go through that.
Thank you, Mr. Stock. As you can see, we've invited a number of people from our community to speak. We have no intention of presenting any canned presentations, but simply we wish to allow these people to make statements that they think might be appropriate. At this point, I will go ahead and you can see the kind of the order that we'll be following, and at this time I'll go ahead and turn the floor back to Mr. Mark Stock, who's the superintendent of the Wawasee Community School Corporation, and he'll make a statement.
Just like to address the issue on personnel and let you know that at this conference we will not be discussing the actual personnel. Those are confidential situations and are handled internally, as all management functions are in that regard. And so that will be taking place on that side. That is a confidential issue, and the disposition of that will be handled by us, and the situation is not over. We've not finished up how we intend to handle that, but we will proceed. And our hope is that a year from now, 2 years from now, our community can look back and see that this was one of the events that helped us understand the changing demographics in our society, the changing demographics in our neighborhood, and the hope of getting people to work together and understand those kinds of issues. Many of the efforts we've made this year in working with the minority community have been ongoing since the beginning of this year. And to that end, that would include conclude my remarks regarding how we hope to handle that. At this point, I'll let Mr. Evans introduce the rest of our panel.
Next presenter will be the president of the Wawasee Community Educators Association and the Teachers Association, Charles Packer.
My job here is basically to explain the role of the association in all this. The association has basically a twofold role. First off, the association is not here to judge right or wrong. We are basically here to make sure that the teachers' rights are protected. However, we do understand that there's also some responsibility there also. Secondly, the association is to inform and educate. And we are in the process, and we have been in the process of working with the administration to inform and educate the staff on the importance of being aware of what you say and do and how that can affect others. We have, like I said before, we have been working on that, and we are continually work on educating staff members throughout the year. Thank you.
Earlier in the school year, a task force was formed to address some minority issues, and Mr. Jeff Andree, who's a teacher at Wawasee High School, is chair of that group. It's called the Minority Issues Task Force, and he'll be our next presenter. Mr. Andree.
Thank you. The specific reason for formation of the task force was due to the concerns within the Latino community about the ISTEP testing irregularities of September of 1996. This event was a culmination of concerns by many within and outside the Latino community about bias that has existed within the school corporation and led to the formation of the community group called Rays of Hope, who are represented here today, and the establishment of this task force by Mr. Stock to examine the issues of concern and to find solutions. One of them was improvement of communication between the school and the minority community. Much of this has been improved by the addition of Spanish language paraprofessionals. 3 were added this year to make a total of 5 within the corporation. For these paraprofessionals are in each building, and also the hiring of a full-time corporation-wide English as a second language director. The task force supports the goal of the superintendent to see that the hiring of new employees for the corporation better reflect the ethnic makeup of the community which it serves without diminishing the quality of staff. Also, continued flexibility is desirable as demographic changes point towards an increasing population of language minority and other minority students within the corporation. In addition, the Rays of Hope have been working to offer their services to better inform language minority and other minority parents on the proper channels to follow when help is needed or concerns need to be answered. There was also a hiring of an ESL director, Jose Vasquez, who is with us here today. This was accomplished with the interview process directed by the Minority Issues Task Force. Another point deals with school atmosphere. It was discussed that it was not uncommon for minority students to suffer racial slurs and that some teachers' attitudes reflect a lack of cultural sensitivity. This leaves many minority students with a feeling that there is nowhere to turn within the system. Changing the hearts of students would be difficult, but ensuring that there is a positive, non-discriminatory environment throughout the corporation is a very reachable goal. This can be accomplished through in-services that expose all employees to the ESL program specifically and on cultural differences in general. The task force at this point feels that great strides have been made by the corporation under the leadership of Mr. Stock in ensuring that the minority community feels that they have a place within the school community. The task force believes, however, that it is still needed and will meet at least 3 times a year starting next year. This is a report that was filed to the school board that was compiled actually before the incident of last week and presented to the school board this week. And if you want a copy of the complete text, we have some available up here after the press conference.
Mr. Van Dree referred to a community group known as the Rays of Hope, and we have 3 representatives from that group with us today. And the first one I'd like to invite to speak is Joe Salazar.
My name is Joe Salazar. The Rays of Hope is a group of concerned parents dedicated to the education and well-being of our Hispanic children. Our whole purpose is to work in conjunction with the school corporation in tackling racial issues when they occur. The issue at hand at this time is an issue that is very sensitive to the minority people of this community. We feel that our organization is more than happy to tackle the issue with the school corporation. I feel that by us as a group of concerned parents working together with the school corporation, and I feel at this point in time that the school corporation that is at hand will help us to better develop better sensitive to racial remarks that have been going on in the past. But I feel that I'm one of the co-chairmen of the Rays of Hope, and as when we've taken over this organization, things have been positive in a way that these people are working with us. I know it's sad that a lot of times some teachers teach or not teach, but whether we have no idea what the situation was, but I have every sincerity that the school corporation will handle it in the right way. So other than that, I thank you.
Another officer of the Rays of Hope Community Group is Mr. Isaac Cantu. We have a third representative, another officer in the group of the Rays of Hope, Mr. Ed Rodriguez.
I just wanted to read a handout that we're going to be giving you guys. The group was formed by parents. This is about the Rays of Hope, incidentally. The group was formed by parents of children that attend the Wawasee School Corporation that had a mutual interest in the future of their children. Although mostly Hispanic, the Rays of Hope welcomes all individuals that have a will to dedicate their time and their efforts for the advancement of education and the well-being of our children and our community. That's all.
Mr. Jose Vasquez is the coordinator of the English as a Second Language program at Wawasee Community School Corporation. Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you very much. Concerning the issue at hand, I believe that the worksheet was wrong and it was inappropriate. However, I believe that this is just symptomatic of a great problem that exists among some people in the community and some teachers and students combined. But I also believe that we're moving in the right direction. I think that there's open communication between the school administrators and also the community, and there has been great, good progress done, and I believe that they're going to handle this particular matter with this incident that happened just recently in the right, appropriate manner. Thank you.
Mrs. Carol Schwarzenegger is the president of the Wawasee Community School Corporation Board of School Trustees. Mrs. Schwarzenegger.
Speaking on behalf of the Wawasee School Board, we find this incident of very serious concern. We support Mr. Stock and the administration in their expedient investigation of the situation and also in their concern for awareness of culture diversity in our schools to prevent such an offense to any student ever occurring again. Thank you.
Our final presenter this afternoon is Mr. Darrell Carr. Mr. Carr is the parent of 3 Wawasee High School students.
I was shocked when I first seen the letter. I talked to several parents, minority parents, seen it, and I was really alarmed by the military rankings that this letter had about the Klan. It was so detailed that it floored me. I've been in the Kosciuszko County community for almost over 30 years, and I've never seen anything like it. What's so alarming is that it is taught at the 4th grade level, and only to the elite, well, about 5 or 6 really super smart kids, according to this person. I have children, and there's a lot of children in this community that are minorities. And if it's been taught at that level, my God, where else is it being taught? When I approached Mark with this, he acted real quickly on it, and I feel very strongly that the Wawasee Community School will take care of this problem. But to the nation, in this small community, this is a really good community, but this little thing that happened here could happen in anybody's community. And it's very alarming if a teacher can go out and teach this just because they feel that this is what they need to teach. It's scary. Thank you.
This time, I believe we can open the floor for questions. If people have questions of any of the members of the panel.
I have a question about this letter. Can someone explain this letter that Mr. Carr was talking about? Can we see that letter? And what does it have to do with the incident?
The letter Mr. Carr referred to was a 2-page worksheet. It had 8 questions on it, and the questions were part of a learning center that was used by the teacher in the 4th grade classroom. This teacher had a learning center that had some publications, a newspaper article and a magazine article that had evidently been cut out of the paper regarding the plan. It was from published materials. These questions came from those articles, and students used it in terms of extra activity when the work was done. And the intent was that that was part of a issue on the discussion of racism, discrimination, and etc. And it was a pamphlet that had to do with what the Klan was. As many of you are aware, there had been a rally in the Goshen community a year earlier, and some of the students were wondering what that was. The teacher was trying to explain what that represented. And the learning center in question was from some published materials, and the teacher had taken 8 questions from those published materials, and the students filled out answers to those from the articles. And that's the letter. It's been referred to in some places as a quiz. The teacher did not quiz the students over it. There was no test over those things. It was not a letter. It was an 8-question worksheet that came from those published materials that were part of the center.
Is this normal Indiana history, or is this something that the teacher did on her own volition?
Normal Indiana history does have a paragraph on the Klan in the history books, so that discussion evolves. This was a teacher-made unit that was a fill-in after students finished math work or reading work.
How many students were exposed to this?
However many students choose to do that activity.
So what were some of the questions asked of the kids, some of the derogatory terms? Give us the nature of the questions.
There was a word search that had some of the racial terms in it. There was some questions regarding different Klan positions or whatever that came from that actual published material.
When was the worksheet given, sir?
It would have been a few weeks ago.
April?
It would have been in mid-April.
Was that the only time or the first time it's been used?
I believe this teacher had used that worksheet for a series of years. And this is the first to our knowledge that anyone brought it to our attention that it had been used.
How many years?
She said 10 was a number that she used in the conference.
She's been teaching this?
She's now been teaching.
She's been
this.
involved in this type of activity for the last 10 years, and nobody in the school happens to know about it?
I can speak for myself. I've been superintendent here since September, and this is the first time you heard it.
Does this teacher have, to your knowledge, or anyone else on the panel's knowledge, any affiliation with the Klan?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you think, as a result of this, she may have some affiliation?
I do not.
The question, I asked her the question.
Can we Can we stick with the conference here? For the
So
questions?
was this propaganda sort of materials? I mean, this was in-depth information on the plan. This wasn't just, just to browse the topic. This was in-depth details as to like where to go, kind of propaganda materials.
I don't believe so. I believe these questions came straight from the published material that had been put on the center.
Where were they
At this
published?
point, one of the things, I'll take a few more questions on the incident, but at this point, we'll need to move on, let some of the other panel members, some questions for them. Yes?
The state curriculum, the 4 books in Indiana history do not mention things like the Grand Wizard or the Grand Cyclops or many of the words used in the worksheet. You said that the action was misappropriate. Do you think it was misguided? Did it go way overboard? Is this appropriate, the correct terminology you want to use?
That's inappropriate. The district's position on it is the worksheet was inappropriate.
How did all this come to your knowledge? Give us an idea of was it a parent, a student that brought it up originally?
A parent, step-parent, brought it to the principal's attention.
And the student had brought it home from school?
Yes.
Was this a minority parent?
No. I don't believe so.
Where was this published? I mean, from what articles?
We're trying to find that now. We understand it to be from a national magazine article that was reporting on the Klan activity.
National, like Time magazine?
It was a national publication.
But it
We're
wasn't,
trying to, what I want to say about that in terms of this is we're going to not address any more personnel issues. So those things are things that still have to be looked.
You don't want to address personnel issues, but is this teacher still teaching?
I don't want to answer any more questions on that.
She's teaching, I mean, this is a public school, but this is, she's teaching this community's kids. Is she still?
She's still teaching right now.
Will you consider disciplinary action against her?
Those are confidential. The disciplinary actions and the processes we use as a district will unfold as we finish up. Right now, we still don't have all the story, and we're dealing with the teacher. So,
Can I ask a question of one of the parents?
sure.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Mr. Clark, can you step to the podium, please? I'm not, some of the answers that these kids gave, I mean, from what I've been able to ascertain, are you surprised at the answers from these students?
Yes, I was. Well, from what I understand, they got it from a national syndicated newspaper, okay? And when the question was raised during the meeting where the paper had, I guess they got rid of it somehow. But all of it targeted toward blacks, and that's what was really alarming. I mean, it targeted toward other minorities, but mainly toward black. It had the words nigger, Negro, and black, describing the black American in 3 different ways. It was so in detail. In order to be a member of the Klan, you had to hate blacks. And that's what drew my attention, okay, to it, and not only the other things that was involved in it.
What about the answers from the students?
You can
From
tell
it
that.
as a whole, I mean, was
Well,
that-
you can tell for 4th graders, 4th grade minds can't think like that, okay? They had to get it from either a newspaper or someone else that was more involved in this. You know, the kids around here, these are wonderful kids around here. It takes someone outside, I believe, to get that information that these kids had.
Does it concern you as a parent that this person is still teaching?
Does it concern me as a parent? In a way, it does bother me. She's been teaching for over 25 years or something like that, and she claimed to live a very sheltered life. She needs to get out because I can tell you this here, there are more minorities moving within this area, and there has to be an understanding of all cultures, you know, Native American, white American, black American, and those things have to be taught also in the public school system, which this one here obviously was overlooked for 10 years. And it took a white American family to say, hey, this is wrong. It wasn't a minority family that brought this to attention. It took a white American to say, no, it's not.
So to start view that this was going on for 10 years and that nobody raised the question until this
Well, if it was an all-white community and it was okay with those parents, then quite naturally, you're not going to hear anything. But if you get one parent that disagrees, that I'm not going to have my children do this, this is wrong.
So if she continues to teach, how do you feel about that?
If she continues to teach, I'm going to leave that up until the school board's hand. I feel that Mark and the school board can make a very intelligent decision on what to do with this matter. It's a very serious matter. Hopefully, I hope this thing reaches across the nation, that in your community, stop this before it gets to a point where it reaches a high school, job market, because we're trying to stop those things now. And if we got somebody putting it in over and over again, it'll never stop, it'll keep snowballing.
So just from what you've heard, what's the intelligent decision to make?
I won't answer that right now, okay? I have my own opinion, but I don't want to jeopardize any type of process that is due her, because she's due to a due process just like anyone else. And I have my opinion.
Have you had a chance to talk to this teacher in person?
We all talked to her last Tuesday, and especially she came in volunteering, and we all talked to her.
So what was your feeling about her? Was she receptive or?
Put it this way, I was very shocked at some of her answers, but you can't change people, but she did come in, and it was a tough audience. Believe me, it was a very tough audience for her to walk in there. And some of the questions that was asked of her, she answered to the best of her ability, but I was not very satisfied with some of her answers.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I can get into detail and I can go on and on about it. I just was not very pleased with some of her answers. It was very alarming.
What was one question you asked if you were shocked by the answer?
Like I said, I won't get into that. Okay.
So is there any hope for her, you think, with some cultural diversity training? Is there any hope?
I think there's hope for everybody. Give everyone a chance and just to see what's going to come of this. If not, we'll know.
Do you think that the materials from the meeting that you had with her, do these materials represent her beliefs?
I might have to answer possibly, maybe so. I'm not really sure. Didn't really want to answer that because I didn't want to jeopardize any of the processes, but I felt very strange walking in there, put it that way.
Are you upset that there was a teaching at all about the KKK, or just at the way that this teacher brought
the way
it
it came across? I mean, even I've graduated from Warsaw High School, and we talked about the KKK, but never in this detail. I mean, it made it like, oh, I would like to be a Grand Dragon or whatever. You know, they got all these type of video games out with dragons, and kids don't understand that at the 4th grade level. They think it's probably cool, because one of the answers was, it's fun. It was fun to be a Klansman. And that is shocking.
I have a question for Mr. Scott. I'm also a parent with a child in the school, and y'all say y'all are going to handle this and and look into it further. Well, I don't know what was wrong, what it was all about, and I feel for me to be comfortable with what y'all decide, I need to know what's going on. I'm just lost. I'm just hearing, I don't know what was on the sheet. You saw it. You're no more than me, just a concerned parent.
Right.
And I feel I should get to see that. I can't make any decisions about if I think she, was right or wrong or whatever.
I understand that concern. I will tell you that the principal and I will continue to deal with it and work with the teacher over the situation. I think that to pass the worksheet out also would entail that I would have to provide you with a 15-minute classroom discussion on prejudice and discrimination that went with it.
He's also a parent. Did he get provided with that too? I mean, I want to know what's going on. I want to be able to base my opinion. I can't go by what you're telling me now.
Sure. I understand. And what we need to do is to continue to complete that until we have a full picture of everything that classroom teacher's done and so on with regards to everything, whether it's Black History Month, all of the different items that will go with that, put that together so we understand the context of that. So.
You're still evading my question. Will I get to see what she passed out to the 4th grade class and they got to take home and their parents saw
I do not have a copy with it today, but we'll make sure that you get a chance to see it.
Okay, that's all.
I mean, it's already been faxed to all over, and at this point, but the point to my question, sir, is just that the context of the situation is also.
Well, I'm not trying to make any judgment or anything. I'm curious to know what's going on in my child's schools, you know.
And our goal is, as a school corporation, and is to prepare for the future and help everyone understand that as times change and as everyone changes, our communities change, and people need to understand how those things are received and perceived. And this school corporation will make a serious effort to make sure that those things are dealt with.
Mr. Stark, Mr. Carr said that he was not when he left that meeting with the teacher. Did you consider suspending her or taking her away from dealing with children when you do this in this meeting?
I'm not going to answer all those questions on personnel. I did say at the beginning that I prefer to not discuss the personnel issue for confidential reasons.
Question, Mr. Vasquez?
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez, evidently this teacher has been using this workbook for the last 10 years. Does it concern you that what was in that was being taught for the last year, and what do you think the effects have been on this community and to the students that are learning this?
Well, like I said, I think that the worksheet was wrong. I think it was inappropriate, and like I also said, I think this is just symptomatic of the problems that exist in this community with some teachers, and that's what led to the formation of the Minority Issues Task Force, to address those issues and also to educate the teachers as a whole, as a corporation, to be very sensitive and to educate them about how to deal with minorities. And I think, like I said, I think we're moving in the right direction. Yes, it bothers me. It bothers me that this has taken place, and it took so long to surface. But I think it's good because this gives us a chance to discuss it, to talk about it, and like someone said, if we all sang the same note, there wouldn't be any harmony. But I can say that we can all sing the same song. We can sing the same song. And what I mean by that is, if we work together as a corporation and make sure that this thing doesn't happen again, and to establish some guidelines and some procedures as to what to do in case this happens again. And in my experience, I think this will happen again, maybe not in the same manner, but I think that we're making good progress. The communication is open, and I don't know if that answers your question.
Are you concerned that this wrong, Mr. Teacher?
Yes, I would say I'm concerned because of that worksheet.
Excuse me, Mr. Vandry, I just wondered, you sort of mentioned this in your thing that you were reading about, that there have been some past issues, some past racial slurs, I think you mentioned. Could you tell me that again? Or?
Well, what we were talking about, obviously, in any school district, there's going to be, when there's a situation with different minorities, there's going to be slurs that are used. What we were specifically talking about was a case that took place in the fall in regards to the I-STEP test here, a situation where there wasn't some language minority students that were properly tested, and they were excluded from the testing process, and probably on the because of their having a Hispanic name as opposed to what the language skills were. And that is when the Rays of Hope were formed as a result of that. And they had a community meeting that was attended by 70, 80, 90 people. that were concerned about this situation, and it was, as I mentioned there, it was a culmination of things within this community. I'm not from this area. I moved here 6 years ago, and I have detected undertones at times of attitudes towards the Latino population that are positive. And when you talk to the gentleman on my right, and they will tell stories all day long about it. So the key here, though, is that the new superintendent wants to resolve these issues in a positive way and make sure that all members of our community have a place at the table, and make sure that it is a non-discriminatory attitude in this corporation, and that everyone feels they have their voices being heard. And I think if you, again, listen to the people that are all represented up here, it's as leaders of the various elements of this community, we feel we're making strides in a positive direction. So.
Okay, thank you.
Can anyone say the percentage of minorities in the school? Do you know?
We have about roughly 140 to 150 students who speak English as a second language. That does not necessarily reflect racial tones, but that does imply that as far as English being a major language, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it is a small percentage in our particular community, but it's growing and changing. We do have a ever-changing community.
Less than 10%?
Yes.
Any idea how many minority students were in the class in question?
I don't believe there were any.
You're not going to be able to provide us with this quiz, this piece of paper, this worksheet.
I don't have one with me, but
Is that a problem? Would we be able to get one?
We can see if someone has one here that you could look at. My concern about that is, again, the context of it is missing in terms of the discussion in the classroom that occurred on discrimination. And
Well, this is an opportunity to put it in context.
Sure, I understand.
We'd just like to tell people, we've talked to a lot of people in this community today who would like to know what was involved, and that's kind of why we're here.
Understand.
And the national publication, would you be able to elaborate on the name
We're
of it?
still trying to piece that together. We need to get the microfiche and so on to find those materials. Don't have them.
But it seems that there were magazine and newspaper articles, not say like a pamphlet from Mary Nation or something like that.
Is that because you said it's been 10 years that they're from old magazines?
They were, and at the point when the parent first made an attempt to come in and talk to the parents and to the teacher and to the principal, when they sat down at that point, principal felt, and myself included, that those materials were inappropriate for that worksheet, and at that point, the teacher determined that that learning center was inappropriate and chose not to use it anymore, and said that she wouldn't and doesn't have those. We're trying to resurrect those materials now, piece it back together. Not, the teacher agreed that she wouldn't do that anymore if it were, because of the nature and how it offended people. So at this point, we're just going to resurrect it and put it back together.
Now, was this worksheet something like questions that the teacher created, or does this come out of like a workbook that the questions were already there?
There's one question in the published materials that come with the books that are adopted by the school corporation, and there's one question on a test, and then there were these 8 questions that the teacher created from the published materials that were in the national magazines and articles.
Okay. But you said that that's not necessarily part of the classroom also. This is for kids who finished the other work.
The learning center was for kids who finished their work, along with other learning centers that were in the classroom on other topics.
Are the learning centers, are they in a separate part of the classroom, or are the things on display, or how exactly does that work?
Most learning centers are on display. But again, the district's position is that it was inappropriate and will be dealt with.
Are there any further questions? If not, we appreciate your cooperation with us today. Thanks for coming. I don't know if Mr. Stark has a final comment that you'd like to make.
That was my final comment.
Okay, if not, thank you. We're finished?
Sir? Here.
You want me to come?
Sure. Grab that.
There's the, we have messages for work